It began with whispers in the dark, with shadows moving where no shadows should be, and with families torn apart by something they couldn't explain. Tonight, I'll share with you 3 true stories of horror each, one more terrifying than the last. Stay until the end, because the final story is unlike anything you've ever heard. They say the ancient Ramin doesn't just hold history, it swallows it whole, and if you stay too long within its walls, something else might claim you too. Who do we have? Its beams sag under the weight of centuries, windows clouded with grime, refusing to let the light in. The roofline bent and broken, like the building itself has been crushed beneath the weight of its own sins. But the true weight pressing down on this place isn't time, it's something much darker. The ancient Ramin was built in the year 1145. From its very foundations, it was cursed. Legend says the land was once a pagan burial site. Rituals, sacrifices, offerings of blood spilled to gods older than memory. When the inn was raised on this ground, the dead didn't rest. They were disturbed, and they were angry. Witch trials came next. Women accused of sorcery, tortured, executed. Some say their last cries still echo through the stone walls of the inn. Later, during the English Civil War, soldiers sheltered inside. Some never walked out. Their blood stained the flagstones, their spirits trapped. Historians call it a relic. Paranormal investigators call it a vortex of suffering. One of the most haunted places in Britain. Among all the rooms, one is feared the most: the bishop's room. Guests dragged from their beds, shadows standing at the foot of the mattress, priests driven away, shaken, pale, refusing to return. They say no one enters without leaving a piece of themselves behind, and it was here that I chose to spend the night. The first thing I noticed wasn't what I saw, it was what I smelled: damp, metallic, like rusted iron, like old blood. The inn's owner handed me a lantern. His warning was brief: don't let the dark settle too long. It doesn't like that. I tried to laugh, but my throat was dry. At first, only whispers, footsteps pacing outside my door, when no one was there. A chill like icy fingers dragging across my skin. Then the scratching began, beneath the floorboards, frantic and desperate like nails clawing their way out. The lantern sputtered, and in the corner, a shadow appeared, not cast by the lantern, independent of it, tall, distorted, almost human, but not. The stench of sulfur filled the room. A growl shook the floorboards. Then I felt it. A hand on my chest, cold, heavy, crushing. I couldn't breathe. Leave. The grip vanished. I gasped for air. The lantern flared back to life. The shadow was gone, but the burning marks remained. I should have run, but before I could, footsteps, slow, deliberate, climbing the stairs. The handle turned. The lantern flickered violently. Shadows writhed across the walls. The door slammed open, empty. Then came the laughter, high-pitched, innocent, but cruel. That was enough. I ran down the corridor, the inn groaning like it was alive. Doors slammed on both sides. The laughter twisted into screams, some furious, others agonized. And behind me, boots echoed my every step. No matter how fast I ran, they matched me. Relentless, I burst through the doors into the night air, and then silence. The world outside was calm, but when I looked back, a figure stood in the upstairs window watching. Some say the ancient Ramin is just wood and stone, but I know better. Guests leave with scratches carved into their skin. Others flee from voices whispering in the dark, and some never finish their stay. The bishop's room is not empty. It never has been, and maybe it never will be. Some say the ancient Ramin is just wood and stone, but I know better. Guests leave with scratches carved into their skin. Others flee from voices whispering in the dark, and some never finish their stay. The bishop's room is not empty. It never has been, and maybe it never will be. The ancient Ram Inn doesn't just hold history, maybe it still feeds on it. So tell me, would you dare spend the night inside? But England isn't the only place where terror takes root. Across the ocean, in early America, a family became the target of something so dark, so relentless, that it became the first haunting ever recorded in US history. They say the Bell Witch didn't just haunt a family, she killed a man, and more than 2 centuries later, her whispers are still said to echo across the hills of Tennessee. It was in year of 1817 in the quiet farming settlement of Adams, Tennessee. John Bell, a respected farmer, lived with his wife Lucy and their children in a modest farmhouse surrounded by fields and woods. Life was peaceful until the day John spotted something at the edge of the tree line. It looked like a dog, but its head was shaped like a rabbit. Startled, John raised his rifle and fired. But before the shot rang out, the creature had already vanished. No sound, no blood, no trace. That night, the scratching began. At first, it was faint like rats clawing at wood, but soon the noises grew louder, gnawing, pounding, thumping, as though invisible fists hammered against the walls of the farmhouse. Each time John ran outside with his lantern, the fields were silent, but inside, the sounds only grew worse. Within days, the disturbances invaded the children's rooms, blankets ripped away, pillows flung across the floor. The youngest daughter, Elizabeth, known as Betsy, became the primary target. At night, she would scream as unseen hands yanked her hair, slapped her face, and pinched her arms until they bruised. Terrified, she begged her parents not to make her sleep alone. The family prayed, but instead of peace, the force only grew stronger. At first it was faint singing old hymns, reciting scripture. But one night, when the family demanded to know who it was, the voice answered, "I am a witch." She called herself Kate. From that moment on, the torment was relentless. Kate mocked John Bell, whom she nicknamed Old Jack. She attacked Betsy, pulling her hair until she bled. And she wasn't confined to whispers. Neighbors who visited the Bell home swore they heard Kate for themselves, sometimes shrieking, sometimes laughing, sometimes carrying on full conversations, mocking those in the room. What chilled people most was her knowledge. Kate revealed secrets about visitors that no one else could possibly know. She repeated prayers said in church. She exposed private conversations from miles away. The Bell home was no longer private. It was a stage. By 1818, the Bell, which was no longer just a family's nightmare, it was a regional obsession. Dozens of people gathered outside the farmhouse each night, straining to hear her voice echo through the walls. Some compared the gatherings to revival meetings. But instead of hymns and prayer, the crowd sat in dread, listening to an invisible force taunt and laugh. Even respected men, lawyers, ministers, farmers left pale and shaken after hearing the witch for themselves. Legend says even General Andrew Jackson, later President of the United States, traveled to Adams to see the phenomenon. As his men's wagon approached the Bell property, the wheels locked in place. No matter how hard the horses pulled, the wagon refused to move. Then a disembodied voice rang out, mocking them. Only when Jackson admitted defeat did the wheels finally turn again. He left that night, refusing to return. While the family suffered, it was Betsy who endured the worst. She was slapped, pinched, and choked until bruises covered her body. When she became engaged to a young man named Joshua Gardner, Kate's attacks grew vicious. Each time the couple tried to meet, Kate's shrill voice pierced the air, mocking, threatening, warning Betsy never to marry him. Under relentless torment, Betsy broke off the engagement. Neighbors whispered the witch had stolen her future, but Kate reserved her deepest hatred for John Bell. She mocked him constantly, calling him Old Jack. She swore she would kill him. Soon after, John's health began to collapse. He developed violent seizures. His tongue and throat swelled until he could barely speak or swallow. Doctors were baffled. By the winter of year 1820, John was bedridden. On the morning of December 20th, his family found him unresponsive. Beside his bed sat a small vial of dark liquid. When they demanded answers, Kate's voice rang through the farmhouse. "I gave Old Jack a big dose of that last night. He'll never get up again." That very day, John Bell died. At his funeral, mourners claimed to hear Kate's voice echo through the cemetery, mocking, laughing, singing crude songs over the grave. For the first time in American history, people whispered that a spirit had murdered a man. After John's death, the torment lessened, but it never disappeared. Betsy continued to suffer for years, and locals reported strange lights flickering in the nearby woods. Whispers carried on the wind. The entity seemed to retreat into a cave not far from the Bell property. That cave became known as the Bell Witch Cave. Even today, visitors report scratches across their bodies after stepping inside. Others hear a mocking woman's voice in the darkness, warning them to leave. The Bell Witch wasn't a random spirit. She was intelligent, targeted, cruel. She promised she would kill John Bell, and she kept that promise. The Bell Witch killed once, and if her whispers are still heard today, what's to stop her from killing again? If the Bell Witch's wrath chilled you, Wait until you hear the final story. Which of the two hauntings so far would you fear the most? Comment below, I'll be reading every answer. But some hauntings go beyond a place. Some attach themselves not to a house, but to the people inside it. And when that happens, there is no escape. It began with children's toys moving on their own, and ended with a message on a phone that read, "This is the true story of the South Shields Poltergeist, one of the most chilling and intelligent hauntings of modern times." In 2005, a young couple in South Shields, a coastal town in northeast England, moved into what they thought was a safe suburban home. It wasn't an ancient mansion. It had no violent history. It was simply a modest house where they hoped to raise their 3-year-old son. But the walls of that home would not stay silent for long. At first, it seemed harmless. Each morning, toys neatly stored in their son's room reappeared scattered across the living room floor. The parents assumed the boy had snuck out of bed, but every time they checked, he was fast asleep. Then the toys began sending messages. One morning, a stuffed animal sat upright in a chair clutch in a box cutter. Another day, a teddy bear dangled from the ceiling, light its neck wrapped in string. These weren't pranks. They were warnings. The couple locked doors, checked every room, left lights on. It didn't matter. Chairs scraped violently across the floor in empty rooms. Cabinets slammed shut. Tables flipped over with brutal force. At night, heavy footsteps echoed up the stairs, slow, deliberate. The house was no longer quiet. It was alive. Then came the texts. The mother's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You're mine." She froze, called back. The number didn't exist. More texts followed. "Get out, I can see you." And then, the most terrifying of all, "I'm going to kill you." The messages always came at the peak of the activity, when doors slammed, toys flew, furniture toppled. It wasn't random, it was intelligent, and it had found a way to reach them directly. Terrified, the couple called for help. Investigators soon arrived. What they witnessed shook them to their core. Chairs dragged across the floor on their own. A toy chest slid across the room and slammed against the wall with violent force. The child's rocking horse swayed furiously, untouched. There were no wires, no tricks, only raw, hostile energy. Even hardened investigators admitted this was unlike anything they had ever seen. But the poltergeist wasn't just after objects. It wanted the family. One night, the mother awoke paralyzed, unable to move, unable to breathe. Something pressed hard against her chest, crushing the air from her lungs. She thought she would die, and then suddenly it released her. As she gasped for breath, she heard it, her own name, whispered in the darkness. The father was attacked. 2 deep scratches ripped across his back and arms, while others watched in horror. The marks appeared instantly and burned for days. Even the investigators weren't spared. Some began receiving the same chilling texts on their phones. The message was clear: no one was safe. By 2006, the haunting had destroyed the family's peace. The little boy, once playful, now begged not to enter his room, terrified of his own toys. The parents lived in exhaustion and dread, not afraid of burglars, not of intruders, but of something that could not be locked out. Broken and terrified, the family fled the house. But escape did not bring peace. As the noises continued and the threatening messages kept coming, the horrifying truth became clear. Whatever haunted them wasn't tied to the South Shields house. It had attached itself to the family. This was not a haunted house. It was a haunted bloodline. To this day, the South Shields Poltergeist remains one of the most disturbing cases ever studied. This haunting wasn't just about slamming doors or moving objects. It was intelligent. It was cruel. It could communicate. It could threaten. And it could follow. As one investigator put it, it wasn't the house that was haunted. It was the people. To this day, the South Shields Poltergeist remains one of the most disturbing cases ever studied. It wasn't just about slamming doors or moving objects. It could communicate. It could threaten. And it could follow. As one investigator put it, it wasn't the house that was haunted. It was the people. This wasn't just a haunting tied to walls and floorboards. It was a parasite. One that found a family and never let go. The ancient Ram Inn, the Bell Witch, the South Shields Poltergeist. 3 different horrors. One terrifying truth. No one is ever truly safe. Which of these 3 stories would you fear the most? Tell me in the comments below. I'll be reading your answers. And if you enjoyed tonight's stories, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. so you never miss the next tale from the shadows, because the dark is always closer than you think.